Off play action. Here's Goff. He's got his target. That's complete. And he takes this one in for a Lions touchdown. Amon-Ra St. Brown. A 12-yard touchdown grab. And the Lions are off to a 13-0 first quarter lead. So a good start to the campaign so far for them here in week 1.
What's up, my Madden Rebo Warriors? My name is David. This is Franchise Revival, and I'm bringing you the video a lot of you have been waiting for. We're going to talk about the slot. I love slot, as John Hanson, the fantasy guru, would say. If you don't know, where you been, man? He's a great guy, and he has great fantasy advice. So it's all about the slot position. If you know anything about Madden 25, if you rebuild enough teams, you've seen that at the end of every year, most of the top wide receivers are wide receivers that line up in the slot a lot. They're usually the wide receiver one, and you'll find them in the slot, getting a lot of production, putting up big numbers. And we're going to talk about which playbooks are the best to feed that position. When I think of the great slot wide receivers, I think of Wes Welker, Julian Edelman, or as Randy Moss calls him, Edelnut. Michael Thomas and Drew Brees hooking up for record numbers. CeeDee Lamb nowadays, Rashee Rice, and maybe the slot goat of Madden 25, Amon-Ra St. Brown, the Sun God, or as he should probably be known now as the Slot God. But that's another video for another day where we examine and break down why Amon-Ra is so good, especially in the slot. I mean, he's outperformed all the guys on the Bengals, the Vikings, the Dolphins. I try to use Tyreek Hill, Jamar Chase, JJ. I try to move them into the slot, and they just didn't put up the numbers that Amon-Ra did. And they're all better players, higher overalls, and they just don't exceed. You know, I really thought like, all right, well, I have some numbers here, and I think I can improve them by putting better players in there, and it just doesn't work that way. So the main teams I used were the Chiefs, and then I used the Lions. So it did a lot of simulations, a ton of simulations. And I will say the Lions are better than the Chiefs, especially with playbooks that feature a slot wide receiver. Mainly that's because of Amon-Ra. But Jared Goff put up numbers that you see Patrick Mahomes put up every once in a while. And I really think part that kind of helps or hurts either one of those guys is that Goff doesn't have any abilities. He's like an 87 overall, and he has no abilities with the team I used. And Patrick Mahomes does. And I think abilities can actually hurt more than help. Another video for another day. But if you have the wrong abilities on a player, especially a quarterback or running back, wide receiver, if you have the wrong abilities, you can actually hurt them. And I don't know. Some people just turn abilities off altogether. So maybe you want to do that. All right, we're getting sidetracked here. I will add, however, that I did edit Goff for all of these. I put throw ball away on, and that really helped him. If you have done a lot of rebuilds, you've noticed probably that the Lions have kind of sucked a lot, and it's usually Goff throwing a ton of interceptions. For whatever reason, some quarterbacks don't have throw ball away on. They all should, because all quarterbacks throw the ball away. And that's just a weird thing man does. So you definitely want to turn that on, especially if you slow sim. And then I put ideal pocket presence and ideal decision making, and he's just as good as freaking Patrick Mahomes without the abilities. So that's pretty much it. That's pretty much all the housekeeping. Let's get into the playbooks. I'll give you my top 3 at the end, but before that, I'm going to talk about some playbooks that I think deserve to be mentioned. Also, if you look around, you can see some CPU versus CPU gameplay going. I finally found a channel I can trust, the Sim Gaming Network. The guys over there, that guy, I don't know his real name, but I just know them as Sim Gaming Network. He does an awesome job. If you're not subscribed there already, go subscribe. He works tirelessly on gameplay and game sliders and all that stuff, like getting RB rotations and everything down. It's awesome, and I know they're going to update the CPU versus CPU sliders, but the game that I got on behind me, I was very happy with. So You will be seeing some CPU versus CPU slow sim stuff for me because I finally found someone who puts in a lot of work into these sliders and getting good gameplay. So go check out Sim Gaming Network. Now, let's get into it.
Now looks to throw. Work in the middle of the field, and he's got a man complete. Now he breaks free in the middle of the field, and he'll get into the end zone. Touchdown, Detroit. Jamison Williams, 53 yards. And the Lions are on the board here first in the season opener.
All right, so first up, we have to mention the Cincinnati offense. I almost consider not including them, but the numbers say I have to. Since he was originally my top three at the beginning of the year for best offenses, you can expect about 4,600 to 4,700 passing yards a year. But I've seen 4,900 to 5,000 yards, 45 passing touchdowns, but I've seen 50 every once in a while. Now, usually it's Jamar Chase who's putting up, 105, 115 catches on the outside. But if you move your wide receiver one into the slot, you're still going to get 90 to 110 receptions, 13 to 1,500 yards receiving, and 20 to 25 receiving touchdowns. I think that's the one difference. If you leave him on the outside compared to when you take your wide receiver one and put him in the slot, is the touchdowns increase for him. Your wide receiver two, he's probably going to get about 100 plus receptions and go over 1,000 yards. Wide receiver three, probably going to get 60 to 70 receptions a year, 700 to 1,000 yards for him. And your tight end can get anywhere from 70 to 80 receptions and the 600 to 700 range of yards. Touchdowns will be, dispersed. And then you can also cycle in who's in the slot. Putting your wide receiver two in the slot can change your QB production. It can also change all the wide receivers' productions. Putting your wide receiver three and just putting him in the slot can kind of spread out all the production. So you have three 1,000-yard wide receivers, and maybe one of them's a tight end. You might even get four 1,000-yard receivers with your tight end if you put your wide receiver three in the slot. But like your wide receiver ones are going to have 12, 1,300 yards, are going to be more down in the 1,000, 1,100 range. And here's some examples of seasons that I simmed through: 12-5, first in passing at 289.5 yards a game, over 400 yards passing, 42 touchdowns, 11 receptions. And you can see Amon-Ra had 104 catches, over 1,500 yards receiving, and 16 touchdowns. The next season, 15-2, first in passing at 289.7, 4,900 yards passing, 50 passing touchdowns, 11 receptions. And Amon-Ra had 102 catches, 1,300 yards, and 11 touchdowns. In the third season, 12-5, first in passing, over 4,800 yards passing with 44 touchdowns. And Amon-Ra, 119 receptions, 1,600 yards, and 21 touchdowns.
Off play action. Here's Goff. He's got his target. That's complete. And he takes this one in for a Lions touchdown. Amon-Ra St. Brown, a 12-yard touchdown grab. And the Lions are off to a 13-0 first quarter lead. So a good start to the campaign so far for them here in week one.
Yeah, all the things that you dreamed about in April.
How about a playbook that might surprise you to be on a list? The Panthers. Yes, the Panthers has a very sneaky offense. I've seen 15-2 seasons with this playbook. That'll get my attention. Dave Canales, I believe he's responsible, or believed to be responsible, for the turnaround of Baker Mayfield. And as we've seen in the past couple of weeks, Bryce Young seems like he's come back from his mini benching as being an improving player. Your QB numbers will probably be around 4,500 yards passing. Really doesn't deviate too much from that. Your wide receiver slot position, you're looking at 105 receptions to 132 plus receptions, 13 to 1,800 receiving yards, and 17 to 25 receiving touchdowns. Wide receiver 2 is about 80 to 90 receptions, 900 receiving yards, give or take. Wide receiver 3 and tight end alternate being the third option. And your RB can get 40 to 50 receptions sometimes, depending on how many yards are dispersed between all the players. And along with that, your running back gets about 1,200 rushing yards and double-digit TDs, especially if they're the main starter. It's a really good playbook, and it deserves to be pointed out. And one thing I love about playbooks like the Panthers, I think so many playbooks are viable in Madden 25, and it just depends what you're looking for and what you need. And I think you can win a lot of games and definitely feed your wide receiver 1 in slot with the Panthers. So let's take a look at some example seasons. So in this example, they went 12-5, third in passing. Jared Goff had over 4,500 yards passing with 47 touchdowns. Amon-Ra had 117 receptions, over 1,600 yards receiving, and 24 receiving touchdowns. The next season, they went 11-6, fifth in passing, over 4,400 yards passing with 41 passing touchdowns. And Amon-Ra had 111 receptions, over 1,700 yards receiving, and 22 touchdowns.
Now Stafford. And he'll get into the end zone. Touchdown, Rams. Demarcus Robinson, a 7-yard touchdown grab. And the Rams have got it back to within a score.
As they began this last drive, things weren't exactly looking up for this offense. But after what they just did, putting the ball in the end zone, that took them away from the brink of possibly being knocked out of this game.
Let's talk about the Tennessee Titans offense. This is a really sneaky passing offense. It's almost like a Cincinnati light. You're going to see 12-5 plus seasons. Quarterbacks get about 4,700 to 4,800 yards passing. Now, touchdowns can vary from about 33 to 45 passing touchdowns. That's because RBs do get a lot of rushing touchdowns, and QBs get 90-plus rushing attempts with some rushing touchdowns. So that kind of takes away from the passing TD numbers and, of course, the receiving TD numbers. But what makes me say this is like a Cincinnati light is I've seen a lot of sims where all three wide receivers go over 1,000 yards, and the tight end flirts with 800, 900 yards as well. So you're going to see for the wide receiver 1 slot position, 95 to 129 plus receptions, 1,200 to 1,800 plus receiving yards, and 17 to 22 plus TDs. That's for your main wide receiver 1 slot option. Wide receiver 2, 90 plus receptions with highs in the 900s to 1,100 receiving yards, and wide receiver 3, 60 to high 70 receptions and about 700 to 1,000 yards receiving. Tight ends about 70 to 80 receptions, about 700 to 800 receiving yards. I've seen a bunch of seasons where you get 3 1,000-yard wide receivers. So you wouldn't think about that with the Titans, but they do have a really crappy quarterback, and it takes them a long time in simulations to build. So let's talk about the example sims I have for you. I had some really good ones, and I did them a while ago, and I just can't figure out which ones are which. So I just did a couple new ones tonight, and I had some better examples. But here we go. This is what I have. So in this first season, they went 10-7. They led the league in passing at 294.4. Jared Goff would have went over 5,000 yards if he didn't get hurt for 2 games. Amon-Ra had 116 receptions, 1,600 yards receiving, and 15 touchdowns. And then the next one we have is 10-7, second in passing, over 4,800 yards passing. And Amon-Ra had 105, 1,619 touchdowns, and you will see that we have a wide receiver that has 900 yards followed by 800 and 800. So all 4 options getting fed the ball in this offense. And like I said, I've seen way better sims where you're getting at least 3 options at 1,000 yards 1,000 yards receiving.
Now Goff. The This is caught. Touchdown. Jamison Williams. Already his second touchdown here in this opening weekend. And the Lions add 6 to their lead. What a first half he is compiling here. He's already over 100 yards receiving and now 2 touchdowns, CD.
Brandon, you know I don't.
Okay, so here we have Atlanta. Now, Atlanta was originally in my top 3. They're probably my second, but I had to move them out because of something that happened, which you will find out at number 1 through making this video and doing some last-minute simulations. I found out that I might have, not had the correct number 1 until tonight. It's crazy how things happen. But anyway, I like Atlanta's offense. I want it in my top 3, but we'll make this the honorable mention, just outside the top 3. Why is this, considered top 3 potential? Well, it's a winning playbook. I've seen plenty of 15 in 2 seasons. Great playbook. QB gets about 4,400 to 4,900 passing yards, 50-plus passing TDs, consistently. That's one of the reasons why I like this playbook, because Goff was throwing for 50-plus TDs a lot. And when you go over 50, you pretty much lock up MVP. The wide receiver 1 slot position got 105 to 127 receptions with 1,500 to 1,700 receiving yards. Sometimes you see 1,300 yards. This has nothing really ever below 1,500. Maybe a little bit every once in a while, but I mean, that's a lot of yards. That's a lot of touchdowns. It's a good amount of receptions. And then TDs were 20 to 28 in a season. And this playbook is very tight end heavy too. A lot of times when I see rebuilds, the Atlanta Falcons draft another tight end, and either Pitts or that new tight end become the slot wide receiver, and they have 2 superstar X Factor tight ends, and that's just crazy. And they're both going over 1,000 yards or damn near close to it. So for those of you who have asked about 2 tight end offense, check out Atlanta. Put one of those tight ends in the slot. Get them as close to 90 speed and acceleration as possible. Wide receiver 2 and 3, they can flirt with 800 to 900 yards and kind of go back and forth. So there you go. And as far as the example seasons here I got for you, I actually have these already done, so we'll go into them right now. The first example, they went 14-3, first in passing, 4,900 yards passing for Jared Goff with 54 touchdowns. Amon-Ra St. Brown had 89 receptions, 1,500 yards, and 20 TDs. The second season, 13-4, second in passing, 4,600 yards passing with 50 passing touchdowns. Amon-Ra, 127 receptions, 1,700 yards receiving, and 28 touchdowns. And the final season here, 15-2, over 4,400 yards passing with 52 passing touchdowns, 108 receptions for Amon-Ra with 1,600 yards receiving, and 26 touchdowns. So there is your honorable mention.
They got to be thinking a chance to get right back into this football game. And it's complete. He's got it in the end zone. Touchdown, Rams. Colby Parkinson from 3 yards out. And the Rams are back within a score.
All right, so it's time, and this is our number 3 top offense for the slot. Yes, the Detroit Lions. If you've done any rebuilds, you've always seen Amon-Ra in the top 5, probably more likely the top 3 in receptions, receiving yards, and touchdowns. He's always up there, even with a broken Jared Goff in certain simulations. Now, originally, I didn't want to put the Lions in the top 3. A little boring, but with the spikes it gets in certain rebuilds and seasons, I have to put it here. It has the third most or fourth most ever receiving yards, for Amon-Ra I've ever seen in a sim. So I got to include it at number 3. You can definitely expect 13 to 14 win seasons. QBs about 4,600 to 5,000 plus passing yards. That's pretty good. Now, you're only going to get touchdowns for passing in the 37 to low 40s. So, RBs are going to get fed here. It's like, what do you want? Do you want your tight end to get fed? Do you want your wide receiver 2 or 3 to get fed? This or that, this. So, if you want your running back, and if your running back's also the power back, they get fed, then this is your playbook. RBs tend to get double-digit touchdowns. The wide receiver 1 slot position, 105 to 126 plus catches a season with 1,400 to 2,000 plus yard receiving upside on it. Wide receiver 2, 85 to 90 plus receptions, not high 900s to 1,100 yards receiving. And your tight end, it's about 65 to 80 plus receptions, 700 to 900 yards receiving. So it's kind of like, and you might see some RB pass catching, but not too much. I think you would think there'd be more RB receiving numbers in this offense, given how the real lines look, but not so much. So there you go. Let's take a look at some example seasons here that I luckily saved from last time, so I have to redo these, and then we'll get to number 2. In the first example season, they went 13-4, 4,600 yards passing, only 37 passing touchdowns. Amon-Ra had 105 receptions, over 1,500 yards receiving, 17 touchdowns. And then season 2, they went 14-3, over 5,000 yards passing with 41 passing touchdowns. Amon-Ra, 126 catches, 225 yards receiving, and 20 receiving touchdowns.
4th down, a give to Gibbs. And he takes this one in for a Lions touchdown. Jahmyr Gibbs, a 3-yard touchdown run. And the Lions' decision to go for it pays off with 6 points.
And at number 2, formerly of number 1 as of a couple hours ago, the Los Angeles Rams. Originally, what got this playbook to number 1 was that it broke the 2,000-yard mark and the single season record. So automatically a spike like that, got to put it in number 1. But it's been recently knocked off, and you'll see who did that in a second. Records 12-5, 13-4. QB about 4,700 to 5,000 plus passing yards. 45 passing touchdown, give or take a few. Wide receiver 1 slot, 110 receptions to 138 plus receptions. So, possibly could break the single season reception mark. 20 plus TDs a game for that position. Wide receiver 2 gets about 85 to 115 plus receptions. Wide receiver 3 gets 60 to 70 plus receptions. So it's more of a 3 wide receiver base offense. If you know anything about the Rams, they run like 3 wide receiver sets more than anybody in the NFL. Tight end, low 600, high 500 passing yards or receiving yards, and maybe, like 8 touchdowns. More of a red zone blocking threat there for the tight end. So let's talk about our example seasons here. Season 1, 13-4, 5,051 yards passing with 43 passing touchdowns. Record season, 138 receptions, 249 receiving yards, and 21 touchdowns. Season 2, 12-5, 4,700 passing yards with 47 touchdowns. Amon-Ra St. Brown had 111 receptions, over 1,600 yards receiving, 24 touchdowns. Season 3, 13-4, 4,700 yards passing with 45 passing touchdowns. Amon-Ra, 113 receptions, over 1,500 yards receiving, and 20 touchdowns. Also, go back and talk about that second season. J-Mo had 119 receptions and 1,200 yards receiving. So, yeah, it's definitely a receiver-based offense. But it's no longer number 1.
Here's Stafford. And this is caught now over yet.
I'm not sure win-win is the proper term here, but it certainly felt like it. They got the touchdown they needed, but if I'm on the defensive side of the ball, okay, you got the touchdown, but it sure took you a long time.
Yeah, because offensively there, you're probably hoping for a 1 to 5 play drive. That one ate up a little more time than they were hoping.
You're exactly right, and if you have that 1 to 5 play drive, you actually build up momentum and even more hope. When they had to slog their way downfield, they got the touchdown, but it's almost like, yeah, you know,
doesn't feel right.
Exactly.
And the number one offense for slot, just absolutely stat stuffing your wide receiver, is the Denver Broncos. Now, originally, I said this was just a sneaky good offense. And, you know, you hear Sean Payton. I know it says Gaffney, but Sean Payton's offense. When you hear Sean Payton, you think of Michael Thomas and Drew Brees in the slot. Originally, the offense, I only thought, got 4,400 to 4,800 passing yards with 40 to 45 plus passing TDs. The slot would get 90 to 105 receptions, 1,400 to 1,700 receiving yards, 20 to 30 plus TDs. Decent record. Not too many 15-2 records. Like, this is why it was honorable mention, because the consistency of the records. But we just shattered all that with the stats. So we're going to get into the seasons that we want to talk about here. Season 1. First in passing with 277.6 yards a game. Goff had 4,700 yards passing with 56 passing touchdowns to 16 interceptions. Amon-Ra St. Brown had 103 receptions, over 1,600 yards receiving, and 30 receiving touchdowns. Wide receiver 2 had 86 for 900. Wide receiver 3 had over 60 receptions for 899. Tight end had about 68 receptions for over 600 yards and 8 touchdowns. Now, the season that put this at number 1, 14-3, first in passing at 295 a game. Most I've ever seen, I think. I never really passed that. I think we've gone over this amount of passing yards before. So Jared Goff had 5,015 yards passing, 53 passing touchdowns to 11 interceptions. And Amon-Ra St. Brown had 120 receptions, 2,119 receiving yards, absolutely shattering the record, and 32 receiving touchdowns. Like, in every playbook, either you have 5,000 passing yards with the ability to go over 2,000 receiving yards for Amon-Ra St. Brown with a bunch of catches, or you have a touchdown more leaned result where you have Jared Goff getting over 50 passing touchdowns with upside of high 20s, low 30s receiving numbers for Amon-Ra. But this has everything. It has over 5,000 yards passing, over 50 passing touchdowns, over 120 catches, over 2,100 yards, over 30 receiving touchdowns for Amon-Ra. This is the number one book. Go get out there, see how you can break these numbers. Our next thing is we're going to do, and I'm glad it's Denver because I didn't want to do a Lions rebuild. I really want to do an Atlanta rebuild because I really want to do a 2 tight end thing, but we'll do that. That's cool. We'll save that for later. But I'm glad it's Denver because I want a team like this to rebuild. So we are going to do our rebuild next and see if we can create the next sun god, the next slot god. We're going to examine why Amon-Ra is so good and why wide receivers like Jamar Chase, Tyreek Hill, and CeeDee Lamb didn't do so well in the slot compared to Amon-Ra. What makes Amon-Ra so freaking good? And we're gonna do that thing. We're gonna rebuild the Denver Broncos and see what kind of career we can make one lucky wide receiver in the slot out to be. So there you go. Send me your thoughts, what kind of experiences you had rebuilding with this, What teams did you use Denver with? Did you rebuild Denver? Did you jump in Cincinnati? Did you mess with Jamar Chase and change up his abilities? Because like I said, abilities will hurt. I think that's why those other wide receivers don't do so good in the slot, because they have outside abilities. Whatever. That's another video for another day, like I said. But I'm so excited I'm finally done this video. So much simming. I've never simmed so much in my life. It's crazy. I'm turning into a computer nerd. So there you go. The Denver Broncos. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. And let me know your rebuild stories using the Denver Broncos offense. Let's go. See you next time for a Denver Broncos rebuild. Peace.